Hello, today we are joined by Her Excellency Beti Bigombe here at the Anwar Gargash Diplomatic Academy, a distinguished guest who excelled in peacekeeping for more than 2 decades. Her Excellency served as the Senior Director of Fragility, Conflict and Violence in the World Bank Group from 2014 to 2017. She also played a vital role in conflict resolution as Minister of State in the 1990s, again as Chief Mediator to the conflict for the government of Uganda and the Lord's Resistance Army in the mid-2000s, where she led the peace and humanitarian efforts and negotiations. In addition, Her Excellency was appointed in 2011 to be State Minister for Water Resources for the Uganda Cabinet. First and foremost, thank you for taking the time to be here today. It's an honor to have you and to be able to learn from some of the experiences and the knowledge that you carry. My name is Asma Al-Amri, a trainee diplomat at the Anwar Gargash Diplomatic Academy, and I can't wait to move forward with this interview. But before we dive into the questions, I wanted to ask you this. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you very much. And thank you very much for having me here today.
Your Excellency, you are well experienced in the field of diplomacy. And if I may start off by asking you to kind of define the importance of diplomacy and why we still need diplomats today.
I would not call myself an experienced diplomacy because this is really first assignment. But that said, I think diplomacy is extremely crucial, especially today when we have so many challenges in the world, that I believe it's through diplomacy that we can prevent, we can seek for solutions to the problem, and prevent some of the natural disasters, because climate change is obviously a big problem. We can also prevent conflict through diplomacy, because I strongly believe in preventive diplomacy. In today's world, you cannot afford to be in isolation. Even if we're talking trade, not conflict, we still negotiate. We still need diplomacy in everything we do around the world. So to me, diplomacy has evolved over the years. I think some time back was the mandates or the roles were limited. But today, it is through diplomacy that we can resolve some of the challenges that the world is facing.
And I'm glad you shed the light on how diplomacy is evolving today. And I wanted to ask you, what are some of the significant ways that tomorrow's diplomats have to differ from today's diplomats? What are the essential points?
Among other things is, I talked about preventive diplomacy in conflict. Since my background and what I do for a living is mainly mediation in conflict situation, for a long time we know about conflicts that they're going to take place. If you look at the case of Africa, we have poverty, we have marginalization of people. Climate change is becoming a huge threat. We have land dispute. We have unemployed youth. Institutions are churning out students without jobs. These are all drivers of conflict. So why do I say that the past diplomacy maybe did not intervene before wars break out? Today's diplomacy can talk about war, can try to prevent it before it breaks out. So they are bolder today, and tomorrow I believe they will be bolder. They will even be smarter than what was practiced in the past.
So in your opinion, what are some of the most important characteristics or skills of a good diplomat, and which ones do they commonly lack?
Diplomats, I think, first and foremost, you're representing the interest of your country. It's not a crime to present the interest of your country, but you also must extend respect to the country you are. There must be mutual interest, mutual respect, between the two. But other things which I think are very important skills in diplomacy is understanding the dynamics of a country, understand the culture, understand the people, so that within that framework, you can promote your own country, you can effectively represent your country when you understand the interest of the people, the culture of the people, the interest of the government. They're all very important. But I would also add that it's just not learning about the culture of the people, it's interacting with them. Because today, in the past, if you look at in the diplomat, it was kind of narrow in the sense that interaction was just with government to government. You had your interlocutor and did not go out to reach the majority. Today, there are many other stakeholders. You have the private sector, you need to know what they're doing. You have the civil society, you have parliamentarians, to get to know the country extremely well, all these stakeholders matter. So that it's not, because if you deal with government, government's interest is to only, it's about government to government, which is important. But today, you need to reach out to all these other stakeholders. If it's a private sector, what is there that country B can gain from that private sector? How do you promote joint ventures? How do you, what are the civil society doing? How can you work with them so that there's beneficial on both sides? So diplomacy of today is not narrow as it used to be. That is just strictly government to government. Everything else was outside the praxis of a diplomat.
Your Excellency, if you had to send out one key message to diplomats starting out on their diplomatic career, what would that message be?
Promote economic integration. That usually goes a long way. It can even end up in political integration. But since every state wants to be sovereign, to be independent, but if we can promote economic integration, the diplomats could further that. It would be, it would help a lot to bring the world closer. We talk about a global village. A global village, what makes a global village? It's if the diplomats are active and they're reaching out. It's just not, it's economic integration is very critical in building that global village, because it comes with learning and many other activities that all the parties would benefit from.
Your Excellency, you mentioned in the beginning that you're not a well-experienced diplomat, but I'm sure, like, after reading many of your backgrounds, you are one of my idols as a diplomat. But I'm sure you've been immersed or integrated in many situations with different diplomats and with different styles and so on. So can you please just share with us an example of successful diplomacy that you've witnessed, and tell us what, in your opinion, made it so effective, why that was imprinted in your mind?
That's a difficult question. There are many. I will have to try to remember. There are many successful ones, but I'm trying to remember what I'm familiar with. I think I can give example of in Africa, what I am seeing today, which is very encouraging, what I talked about earlier, is economic integration. This economic integration is slowly leading to to political integration. We have, for example, East African Community. The countries are Uganda, Tanzania, Kenya, Rwanda, South Sudan, Burundi. Slowly these countries are moving towards, it's economic federation, but more importantly, political integration, which would make us one huge market. This would save us from tariffs and other regulations that usually are a hindrance to smooth flow of goods across boundaries. That is what I would call one successful diplomacy that we have negotiated. We have one legislative assembly now. We have the East African Community Parliament, which parliament discusses the regional issues. If, for example, the pandemic, which we're just about to get over, the COVID-19 pandemic, we embraced it as a community. Again, climate change, which I talked about earlier, we're addressing it as a community so that it's not one country speaking. If the climate change is a major issue, drought, but we're not looking at it as one country because we are experiencing all kinds of upheavals as a result of climate change. But Kenya is not handling it alone. Kenya is doing it together with Uganda, whether it's tree planting, or whether it's protection of wetlands, we're all seeing the benefit of working together on this, as opposed to, our boundaries are porous today. So it has a better impact if we collectively handle some of these issues. Like I said, trade earlier on, the hindrances are addressed as one block for trade. And also, a country like this benefits more if it's going to go to Tanzania or Rwanda or Uganda, can visit all the other 5 countries to see what they offer, so that your country is not dealing just with Kenya, but it's dealing with the entire bloc. So these are very advantageous for us and for our friends overseas.
Thank you for sharing that. Your Excellency, by holding such high-level position even in the past, in the 90s and 2000s, I'm sure it was a very hard time to hold a position as a woman. So my next question is, given your diverse background and experience, what were some of the hardships regarding gender that you faced throughout your career, and do they still exist today? And maybe if you could give us advice for women aspiring to be future leaders on how to deal with such hardships.
When I started, women mediators were not heard about. Or if they were there, they were not documented because whatever women's contribution were there was not evaluated nor documented. I think after the UN's Security Council Resolution 1325, that is on the aspect of peace, but even in economic, we have made a lot of progress. A lot has been achieved as far as promotion of women to participate in peace and economic activities are concerned. But we still have a long way to go. we have a long way to go because there's still very many barriers to overcome. I also believe unless women get into the political space where policy decisions are made, where we have, more women, then all these barriers, we will be able to overcome them. We have a long way to go, but at the same time, I want to recognize the fact that we have also achieved a lot from where we were up to today, that men, generally, even we women, I still remember this vividly in my country when the government wanted to pass a bill that a man should marry only one wife. There was demonstration by women against it, that this government should not interfere with what a family wants. There was that. So even women had a negative attitude towards women themselves. Or at the time I became minister, I was, women, what are they going to do? But fortunately, President Museveni of Uganda has been a strong advocate for women in high places of decision-making. And consequently, over the years, there are very many women parliamentarians. In Uganda, in our constitution, we have specific, a woman can stand in her own right as a woman, where a man cannot contest for elections to go into parliament. But a woman has the right also to go for a constituency and compete with men. All this has helped to build confidence of women, go into parliament, have ambitions, and consequently, the number is growing. Rwanda is another country where now you have the 50% policy is being practiced. And so, and there are also men who are very supportive of women. So it's a whole change of attitude. But our culture, our cultural practices are still against women to some extent. But at this, so we need to work on the mindset, not just of men, but women as well, that they should strive, they can get it if they work hard, and that the sky is the limit. So it takes working on the mindset of the people. But of course, like I said earlier on, we need women in policy making, senior decision making places. If we don't, if they're not there, then it's very difficult for women to make progress and grow higher. So, but I talked about the mindset, but also if you talk about political, going for a constituency and going into parliament, we still have the problem that women can't afford it. They do not have the money to run for offices. So how do we get out of this trap? That is part of the problem. But on the whole, I would say, we've made measurable progress, but we still have a long way to go.
Definitely. Your Excellency, with that we conclude our interview. So thank you for giving us an overview on diplomacy and gender. And I hope you enjoy your time in Abu Dhabi.
Thank you very much. And thanks again for having me. It was nice to talk to you. Thank you.